Welcome, Jet fans, to another week and another episode of the Jets Life podcast. And just like every other season, this Jets season's doing no different. It's keeping us kind of at the edge of our seat, leaving us that little glimmer of hope alive. Hopefully, it kind of extends out for another week for us because last week was a lot of fun against the Texans, a game that we all thought was, at least I thought was a surefire loss. Houston was playing hot for most of the season. In my opinion, they have the better coach than we do. I think in most people's opinions, the better quarterback, or at least the quarterback with the most upside moving forward. And it was just the reverse. The Jets were able to, pass for 301 yards behind Zach Wilson. C.J. Stroud threw for 91 yards, and the Jets defense was just strong as usual, allowing just 6 points, um, getting allowing that only touchdown on the play after or the drive after the Zach Wilson fumble. But give a lot of credit to Zach Wilson in a situation where we probably all thought it would be it would be kind of spiral after that fumble. He was able to rebound and we were able to score more points after that. Scoring points is critical in this league, and the Jets were able to score 30 in the second half last week. But that was last week, and now we shift our gears to this upcoming week. Last week going into it, we had a 1% chance of making the playoffs after that victory. That chance is still alive. There's been plenty of you know stuff going back and forth as far as what those chances really mean and what those chances can kind of turn into. And really, at the end of the day, the only way that this season moves forward is with the Jets to win out. Jets have to win out. A loss, and it's realistically over at that point. If it's not already over as we stand right now, and even if they win out, it doesn't guarantee a spot in the playoffs. Obviously, we have a lot of help that's needed from the teams in front of us. I think that if you look at the grand scheme of it all, if all those teams in front of us go roughly 2-2, Jets can find themselves in a situation where they're the seventh seed, possibly the sixth seed, but depending on which teams end up tied with us, and all that math. But that's obviously a conversation for a long time for now, a whole 4 weeks away before we can really start kind of getting excited. It's going to take a lot for this team to get to that point, but I think when you look forward at what the schedule is, you look at this one game here. This game, obviously, every game is its own challenge, and week over week, anything can happen. But if you look at this game here, I think this kind of be our huge hurdle. If we can get through the Dolphins in Miami, we saw what happened a few weeks ago when we played them on Black Friday. It wasn't a pretty sight. Obviously, a lot has changed from even that game. Um, Playing on a short week, the you know the quarterback situation was a little bit in flux. Not that it's been resolved, but at least we have something a little different this time around. We have Zach Wilson with a little bit of confidence playing arguably his best game of his career, in my opinion. It was that 301 yards passing. I think he had over 75% completion percentage or right around there. Um, and threw for 2 touchdowns. And really just, it wasn't so much of, it was the smart completions. I feel like a lot of what we've seen from Zach Wilson is like been the check down or the throw to a guy that's covered, and it's doesn't really leave that opportunity for yards after the catch. We saw a lot of opportunities, especially on passes to the tight ends and running backs, where they were able to make the reception and turn upfield and get additional yardage. And really, and you go back to what we saw that when we saw his offense most successful. Obviously, new coordinator, but um, similar style when Mike LaFleur was running this. We saw Mike White being able to dunk it down, and in many cases, the yards after the catch is what really boosted up his yards total. It wasn't, when Mike White threw that 400-yard game, it wasn't a deep shot game. It was a lot of check down and a lot of let the playmakers make plays with the ball and get yards after the catch. And that's what we saw out of Zach Wilson in this last game. It wasn't a lot of deep shots, but there were some taken, which spread out the defense a little bit. And the biggest thing I think we saw out of this whole offensive staff as a whole is, the entire offense seemed like it was playing with confidence. It wasn't just Zach. The offensive line was playing well. It wasn't the prettiest game, whatever, but you saw situations where Zach had a clean pocket and can survey a little bit. And when he couldn't, he was able to get out, and the receivers were downfield getting open, mainly Garrett Wilson, who, we keep saying it week after week. This guy is just, he's a lifer in my opinion. If there's anything the Jets can do to make sure that guy is here forever, I know it's only his second year, and they can't negotiate contracts out until after the third year, I believe it is. But that man right there, I mean, he's every bit of what this team has missed for such a long time. I don't know if we've had a receiver of his skill set and his talent ever come to this building. So happy he's here with us, and happy he was there last week, because I don't know that we get the same result without the play of Garrett Wilson. He was able to, do a lot with the football, and open things up for all the underneath plays, because he had himself a game for sure. Um, but again, we're looking forward to this game here, and you know, it just, we hit this point in the season where you start to kind of, you know feel like, okay, the season's over. Start looking at tankathon. Jets get a win, and immediately we start shifting our gears to what becomes possible. This Miami game, look, when you saw what happened a couple weeks ago, it was probably destined to be another loss. But I just want to reel things back a little bit. As bad as the final result ended up being, that team was just, it was done for them. I mean, there was plenty of turnovers in that game. Um, Not to mention, the Jets defense did everything possible to try and, you know, get a win in that game. To the extent that they got a pick six. Brandon Eccles ran an interception back for a touchdown. The score was 10-6. After, and then we had an opportunity to maybe get some extra points here. After, I think it was DJ Reed got the interception before the end of the half with 2 seconds left. Um, 10-6, looking at potential Hail Mary. Can we go up 13-6? And the Jets find a way to be the one team possible in the entire NFL to have an interception ran back for a touchdown on a Hail Mary. Um, Scoring up being 17-6. And at that point, things just fell off the rails. It happens to the best teams in the league. And it happened to us in that game. That just you know kind of, not that they gave up, but it just, they were gassed. They were out of it. Just wasn't their day. But that doesn't mean that, that there's a reason they're playing this Sunday. And I truly do believe that the Jets have an opportunity here to beat the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins, they're coming off some issues themselves. The offense has been struggling a little bit. They just collapsed against the Tennessee Titans at home in a game that they led by 14 points, I believe, and then Tennessee ended up scoring 15 points. Went for a 2-point conversion after their first touchdown. A lot of teams are doing that nowadays. I understand it from a standpoint of, like, if we go for two and we get it, then all we need is a touchdown to win. But if you miss it, then you got to go for two again, or else you lose. It's just a weird concept that a lot of teams are doing. But um, I'm not a head coach. I'm not making those decisions. But just a weird thing a lot of teams are doing. But the Titans end up going for two. They get it, and they're given an opportunity right away. Miami doesn't do anything with the ball on offense. It just seems like they're a much different team without, obviously, Tyreek Hill on the field. And it's as great as that offense has been. Tyreek Hill, MVP caliber player. I think that, the league is doing a disservice if they don't make a considerable consideration to this guy to be the MVP, especially after you see what this offense is without him on the field. Um, if he doesn't get considerable MVP votes, I understand it's probably going to go to a quarterback. It's just the way that the award works. But Tyreek Hill definitely needs to be considered for MVP. He is 100% what that offense is. He may end up being the first receiver in the history of the league to go for 2,000 yards. If something that historic doesn't garner some MVP consideration, then that award just needs to be changed to, like, quarterback of the year, and that's just the nature of what that award is. Because I just don't see how if a receiver catches 2,000 yards and is basically an entire team's offense, how that player doesn't get considered as the most valuable player. Um, but anyway, he's battling some injuries, um, and then Dolphins as an offense as a whole is got some issues on from an injury perspective, and this is an opportunity for the Jets to really kind of take advantage of a team that's kind of ailing at the moment. While the Jets are, mostly healthy when you consider, what they've been playing with this whole season. I mean, I know the offensive line has been in shambles, but it's been in shambles all year. Um, the Jets are healthy right now. They have most of their key players that they've kind of walked into the season with. Zach is back at the quarterback position. After watching a couple weeks of Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian for a half, it just kind of goes back to what the coaches were saying all season long. Zach gives us the best chance to win. I've had this conversation before. Jets put themselves in this situation. Somebody else should have been in here besides Zach to sort of challenge him a little bit or just light a fire under his ass at the very least. But we go against this Miami team, an offense that battling through injuries. Achan's missed some time this season and has missed some time during practice this week. Same with Teron Armstead. I believe it was a limited participant in the last injury report. Liam Eichenberg, I believe, is also on the injury report. I'm not sure if he practiced or not this week. I checked the report. Um, I believe I have it somewhere here. And then obviously Tyreek Hill being the big one we got to look at here. Um, if they go into this game, I mean, I think we get a situation where this defense coming off probably one of its strongest performances all year. And when you look at what they were going against, I mean, CJ Stroud, it appears thrown for 300 yards against basically everybody. And this defense in inclement weather, I understand, the circumstance around it. Rookie quarterback going against a strong defense, and that defense stood tall. And to the extent of late in the game, I think what 3 straight drives where they didn't allow a first down, and got out of the drives with 4 and outs, and that led to 9 points. I think that field goals on um, all three of those 4 and outs. I could be wrong on that, but just overall impressed with what this defense has done through all this adversity of this season. That defense is just strong. You look at that defense from most tiers. I mean, all three of these corners should be in the Pro Bowl. I mean, that's just a fact. All three of them are elite. Obviously, Sertan and players like that would garner some votes over some of these players, but if you just look at the overall frame of work, I mean, I can't see how you could tell me that there's 10 corners in this league better than these three guys. I think it's definitely a possibility, if not as primaries, definitely as alternates, that all three of these guys make the Pro Bowl. You look at the linebacker core between Mosley and Quincy Williams, like same story there. I think that these guys have had tremendous seasons, particularly Quincy Williams. Here's a guy that's just developed year over year and has really kind of gained his stride. And then to the extent where I truly believe he's one of the top 4 linebackers in this league, if you can't argue higher. And then the defensive line, Quentin Williams obviously be the primary guy you would look at for an All Pro selection. Jermaine Johnson has had a very impressive season, but he plays defensive end, and there's plenty of ends in this league with double-digit sacks. I don't think he'll get there, but definitely trending in that direction. When you look at what he did last year, look at how he's built on that this year, and I think he's. I mean, it's going to take an impressive last few games of the year, but I think he has the pace to potentially get to double-digit sacks, which would be actually kind of tremendous in this solid-oriented defense where there's snap count limitations for sure. But he is getting a majority of the snap count, and he's taking advantage of that role. Love to see our players hit milestones. Garrett Wilson trying to get 1,000 yards. I think he's about 150 yards, 170 yards away, something like that. Um, just would love to see these guys getting the recognition around the league. Garrett Wilson deserves it. Elias players deserve it. But again, through all this adversity, through all these trials and tribulations, allowing teams to score under 20 points on numerous occasions, and this offense struggling. and then finally they get a chance to really just kind of pin their ears back, which is something that we've been dying to see all season long as a fan base. Um, and I think when you look at this game against Miami, if if Tua is struggling, if it's not the situation that he's kind of comfortable with, I mean, there's going to be some changes for sure in this offense. And Mike McDaniel has proven to be a really good coach. I think that he'll have that game plan in place. But if he's missing his primary target and he's also missing one of his primary running backs, and then also missing his key left tackle, um, it's definitely something you kind of look at and say, okay, maybe this is a situation where the Jets can kind of take advantage of a team that's going through some injuries. Um, and it's the name of the game. We've had our little stint in the middle of the season where we were adapting to some changes in our locker room from an injury perspective, and teams took advantage of us in that timeline too. So here's a situation where it's reversed. We have a team that's going through the injury bug. I still think that the Dolphins are a stronger team overall when you consider what that offense can do versus what our offense has shown that they can do. But maybe this is a situation where Zach can kind of build on that momentum and build on that confidence to string along a couple of good weeks. We have not seen that out of him. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's been a time and point in his career where you can say that he had multiple good games in a row. Um, I'm just trying to picture in my head. I just don't think it's happened. I think that he's had good games, followed it up with poor performances, or just average performances. And even that's something that we can really kind of ask, like, if can he do that? Can he eclipse 220 yards passing? I mean, that's kind of a key. If he can get 220 yards passing, depending on what the running game does, obviously, um, he can hit that point, and just be efficient, hit his completions, get first downs, lead to a situation where this offense can kind of get into that same rhythm it was in last week. They did a good job running the football as well. You'd still like to see some improvements there from a running game perspective, but the offense was clicking. It was doing its job. Hackett was calling a good game. I know he's gotten a lot of criticism this year. But you gotta look at this game. It's gonna be a tough test against Vic Fangio and what he does on defense. And Miami's defense is also kind of on that uptick from a health perspective. I know they lost defensive end in that game against us. Phillips, Dylan Phillips, lost him a few weeks ago. Um, the injury bug is definitely going through the Dolphins, but they've also gotten players back over the course of the last month or so. It's a situation where I think the Jets can go in there and put up a fight, and you'd love to see them walk away with a win. Because let's be honest here, if there's we've talked about it all season long. If Aaron Rodgers can come back, he's only going to come back if there's a glimmer of hope that this team can make the playoffs. And as I mentioned earlier, if the Jets win out and teams in front of them go 2-2, there that opportunity does exist. And um, you look at next week. I know that there's been some reports out there that Aaron Rodgers could come back. He could come back to the team from a full time perspective, and that be activated from the 21-day practice window as early as Christmas Eve is the kind of target date. He's kind of put a hush hush on that report in his recent interview on the Pat McAfee show on ESPN. So it's one of those weird things. I mean, he's been so confident and so optimistic and kind of affirmative that it was going to happen this year. It was kind of odd seeing a little bit of twist in the conversation. It doesn't look like he's had a setback or anything like that, but maybe just trying to kind of limit the pressure. And if anything, I think that kind of adds a little bit more juice to this locker room because if they kind of look at either Christmas Eve or maybe even that the game after the Commanders, believe we play the Browns. If we can look at those last two games and say, we're still friggin' alive in this thing. Hey, Aaron, how's your Achilles doing? Think you have 2 games in you. Try and squeeze into the playoffs. Um, it's at the very least, that's what we wanna see here. I mean, since man, what was the first like kind of real report of the Aaron Rodgers situation? I think it was like late February. I think is when the whole darkness retreat thing happened. Whatever. I mean, we've been you know so pumped up about seeing this guy play football for 10 months, and we got a small glimpse of it for one drive in the preseason touchdown drive to Garrett Wilson, something we thought we were going to see. In my thoughts, I thought we were going to see that at least 13 to 15 times this season. Um, and we never even seen them complete a pass to each other. 4 plays in, he's down. And how can you really kind of like rejuvenate this fan base? I personally believe, you know, I'd like to see his team alive because I just want to see him play. I just, obviously last week was a great week for the offense overall, but I had a weird situation where if we went into the offseason and all we had as far as like what this Hackett offense looks like is the crap that we've seen for the first however many weeks of the season, it would have been very, very difficult from my perspective to gain like a good taste in my mouth for what to expect for this offense next year, even with that Rodgers. I understand Aaron Rodgers versus Zach Wilson, it's going to make the offense better regardless. But I just think for the locker room standpoint, you know, just to see what like live in a game in a when it counts type of situation, what this offense can do, and then from an alternate standpoint, what this defense can do with a lead and with a significant lead potentially, um, it would just change everything overall going into next offseason. I think that the fan base will be more electric. I know we're already going to be excited. We always are. I mean, we were excited, you know, through some rough times over these past 12 years, and potentially going on 13 without reaching the playoffs. So there's always excitement from the fan base, and there should be from every fan base in the league. You should always have some level of excitement. There should always be a player or something like that that you can see having a good year, whatever have you. But what it would do for this fan base to see what we've been dreaming about, talking about for the course of the past 10 months, 11 months, to actually see it on the football field, even in a small sample size, and then kind of putting that same like twist on it of it can be improved. Do they go out and get Devontae Adams in the offseason? Um, but really, in order for that to be possible, it does. I don't think he's going to play if they're not in it. I would like to see him play regardless. I know that some fans don't want to see him at all. They don't want him to get injured, and I understand it and respect that as well. But from my perspective, I just think that it would do a lot to this locker room and this fan base if we were able to see this guy play with this current staff and this current offense and this current defense to support him and back him and protect his potential leads, what that all looks like and what we can kind of visualize that to potentially be. And then with a step next year to potentially improve that, um, I mean, you can kind of play that same game that we played in the summertime. This can be another situation where it's fun. But with all that said, the season isn't over. We have some level of life, how small it is. Like I said, I know going into last week we had like a 1% chance. I think maybe it's 1.5% at this point. I mean, it hasn't grown marginally, but stack a few wins, and we'll see what happens. See what the rest of the league does. See what the rest of these teams are doing. Um, did that lost to Houston? I know C.J. Stroud left the game with a concussion. Not sure what that injury looks like right now. Jacksonville seems to be reeling a little bit after a few losses in a row. Um, Buffalo does still have a tough few games coming up over these next few weeks. Miami's got a tough few games coming up next few weeks, although that ship, I believe, is sailed. I think basically Miami would have to lose every game. We'd have to win every game for us to kind of get into some sort of conversation with them from a tiebreaker standpoint. But the beauty of it is it's December and we're playing meaningful games. They're not as meaningful as we would like. I mean, it would be nice if we were squeezed in a win against the Chargers, a win against the Raiders, or a win against New England earlier in the year. Then I'd feel a little more comfortable with our chances for these next 4 weeks. But we put ourselves in a tough hole. And that's the beauty of sports. You watch these teams, and we've seen it year over year. Different sports teams come out of nowhere, get hot at the right time, and find themselves in the playoff picture. And sometimes it ends nicely. Like you look at the Jets in 2015. Um, we're like 5-5, went on a 5-game winning streak, and then we lost in the end. That happens at times, but then you also see situations where teams get hot and they stay hot. We'll see how the season ends. Regardless, it's always going to be a fun ride. May not end the way we like all the time, but I'm here for it. That's why we do these things. That's why we watch these games. It's for the entertainment. It's for the fun. Let's just hope that fun ends with with potential playoff appearance. But we'll see. And we'll take it one game at a time. Overall, looking at this game ahead, with all that optimism and all that start positivity I had, I said the Jets were going to lose last week against Houston. And, I'll take my wrongs and take that for what it is. I do think the Jets are gonna lose this game as well. And if I'm saying that and we win again, then I'll say we're gonna lose the rest of the year as well. I'll keep saying that we're gonna lose, and I'll keep saying we don't have a shot. But I do think that, looking at this game, the Dolphins, they're a strong offense. That defense has improved, marginal improvements throughout the year, but they have definitely improved from what they were last year, rightfully so, with the new defensive coordinator, calling the shots in Vic Fangio. It's and obviously some upgrades to that defense as well. But I think I don't know. It's a situation where I gotta see it to believe it. Can Zach put together multiple games in a row of competent to above average quarterback play? He hasn't proven it in the past, and I'm not sure that he can do it again. But if he can do it, I think you have a situation here where the Jets can have a legitimate shot to pull off an upset down in Miami. Um, so that's what it is. I think the Dolphins do end up with a victory, but it really just comes down to what this offense is. We know what this defense is capable of. We know that they're gonna hold the Dolphins strong. I know the Dolphins had a strong game against us last time, but obviously I spoke about already what those circumstances were. I think that this defense can really kind of hold anybody anybody to a low score. But it comes down to the offense playing their asses off too, and doing the best that they can. And can they replicate a game plan like they had last week? Can they string together multiple productive performances in a row? If that happens, then I think we could find ourselves in a situation where we're talking about a victory Monday. But if not, then unfortunately, I think any dreams, aspirations we have over the last 3 weeks of potentially seeing Aaron Rodgers and potentially fighting for a playoff appearance could go up in smoke, unfortunately. But regardless, I'll be here and we'll be talking about the Jets as always in our Jets life. And just want to say thank you for listening. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and let's go Jets.